It is Oliver Hoare of the On Athletics Club. He'll be running in the 4xmile at Penn. He's also a co-host of the Coffee Club podcast. Fellow podcaster, Oliver, thanks for coming on. How you doing, man?
Can you hear us?
Don't know if
You can't
Oliver can
hear
hear
us.
us. Man, that great
I'll say something.
intro. All right, great intro, and we could not stick the landing. That's okay. Oliver, can you hear
Yeah,
us?
I can hear you guys now. Yeah,
There we go.
I couldn't hear you guys, and then you looked at me like I was like, oh no, I think
That's
they're
that's
talking
on
to me.
that's
And I
on
can't
me.
hear
I'm
you.
sorry, Oliver. That's on me.
See,
That's all
we have
good.
a producer. We have a producer, Oliver. I assume you guys don't have a producer for your podcast. But it just goes to show you sometimes less is more.
Very
Yeah,
true.
and technology can kind of get in the way as well. Usually not helpful
So,
sometimes.
so before you hopped on, we were recapping the attempt by Teare, Hocker, and company at Hayward in that 4xmile mark. What'd you think of the race?
Yeah, it was interesting because I think Matt ran really well, 359. That was pretty awesome for him. I mean, Tier's ankle was pretty crazy, 353. Doing that by yourself is no easy task. It definitely, watching that, made me realize how miserable it would be to do it by yourself. And I think they did a great job. It was obviously great fan engagement there as well. So it looked like it was a good time. I think they had fun with it. And that's, at the end of the day, if you're going to go for something like that, you want to enjoy it. And I think they did that. So it was pretty exciting. I think it was interesting to see Hocker not. I think Hocker's 357 is obviously not a testament to what type of athlete he is and probably where he is. I think he could obviously run quicker than that, but at the end of the day, they went and had a crack at it, and I think second all time, which is pretty impressive feat. So and that's pretty awesome. So congrats to them.
There is kind of an advantage to being able to see them try to go for the record a week before, because you see what Hocker did, runs 357. He clearly is not a 357 miler, but that's what his best was on that day. Do you see that and kind of take note from that and be like, hey, a 34, 15, 333, 1500 meter runner ran 357 in a mile. Is there any going to be conversation between you and your teammates of how for you guys to be better than a 357 solo, seeing how Cole Hocker, who's making Olympic finals, running 357 miles, like, because that could easily, you guys have equal ability to him, if not even better, but he was only able to pull off a 357. So how do you kind of learn from what it's like running a mile by yourself late in a relay?
Yeah, the one thing I think we took away from it was that it's not easy. Even a guy of his caliber, it can be a hard struggle sometimes. So it's about being mentally focused and switched on, and making sure that you're ready for that kind of pain, that kind of different suffering in a mile where you're not really having anyone to gauge off. I know, particularly for me and Joe, we've been athletes that can kind of push that all the time in the race, whether it's a mile, like we can kind of go gauge off ourselves and go for it. Whereas someone like George, who is a great tactical racer and also can run really fast in the right conditions and race, he's probably going to struggle with it more than what we would, because he hasn't really experienced it as much as what we have. So for him, that would be a good learning curve. And obviously, it's good to see, like you said, it's an advantage for us to see those guys go for it and see how the challenges that face those really talented athletes, we can kind of take note from that and then address it when we go for it.
I was listening to your podcast, your reaction to finding out about this attempt. You're very colorful with your language. I enjoyed it. For those who didn't see the podcast, you mentioned how a lot of people on the internet were kind of like, what are you guys doing here? Why is Oregon doing a 4xmile a week before we are? Clearly they could have come to Penn. What's going on? And they act like no one wanted to challenge them when there was already a 4xmile set up months and months in advance. Have you talked to these guys at all about it? And I guess, have you had any time to reflect now they saw them do their 1552? What's your kind of final take on the fact that we're having 2 4x miles within a 6-day span?
Yeah, I still think it's hashtag not good for the sport at all. I mean, I think what I saw there was fantastic, but it's nothing that's new. It's what I expected. I expected to see great fan engagement. I expected to see people come out and see two of the best American middle distance runners. Um, like I expected that. And I think that one thing that we addressed on our podcast in colorful language was that, we want to make the sport better. I already see the sport at that level. I already see great fan engagement. I already see these two individuals doing great things. And again, we addressed that it's not like completely on the athletes, like Cooper and Cole. In particular, they're going to do what they think is best, but also they're going to be told as well by sponsors and by coaches to do this kind of structure. And we're all victims of that as athletes. And I think the one thing that we were addressing was it would be great to be able to kind of break that mold and compete in maybe an event that's not got a Nike tick in front of it. And you're not a Nike athlete. There are some events like that, like New Balance meets pre. There's a lot of athletes that from different companies that go out and compete. And I think that was the one thing that we were kind of trying to address, was that there's a bit of a structure. But yeah, I think we spoke to Matt. Matt Wanzer was out with us in Boulder. He was working with us with New Gen, doing some cool things that are coming out for Penn. And yeah, I mean, for them, it wasn't supposed to be as big as I think it was. They were just going to kind of go for it, they'll get into the training in, they're staying in Eugene to just get good training and be a part of the meet, and contribute to get the vibe up, get the hype in for athletes and non-athletes to come in and enjoy what was going on. So for them, yeah, it was definitely, I think when Oregon posted that tweet, that was where I kind of got really angry, because the tweet itself kind of said that, oh, no one came up to us and said, yeah, like, come, we invite all these people, high school teams, college teams, pro teams, no one responded, and there was a shushy face. And I thought, that kind of sucks, because I know for a fact that we invited everyone, and rightly so. People obviously have better plans than to do relays at this time of year. It's not a great year, particularly for pro athletes, to go and do relays. There's 10K US trials coming up. There's all these other Diamond Leagues coming up and bigger races, and people want to run PRs. I understand that a relay might not be in your best intentions as a team, but we did send an invite out before. So, and they also sent us an invite a month before the meet too, and we kind of already portrayed ourselves as going to Penn. So that tweet itself got me annoyed, because I know that's not the athletes, that's the system itself, just trying to obviously take away from something else like Penn, or take away something else like Drake. Because again, like Penn and Drake have been around for so long, and they're competing relay events. And yeah, it was kind of annoying seeing that. And I know that's not the athletes at all. And even the coach, I don't think they were involved in that. That was just discommunication. And yeah, that fires you up because you want to be able to compete against these guys. Like if those Oregon boys came to Penn and they kicked our asses, I think it would have been a great experience for not just us to learn from getting beaten, but also for the crowd and the spectators, the Cole, Hocker and HockerTeare fans. So that was kind of what we wanted to get behind and push. But again, it's definitely something that it's just the way the system is, and the system hasn't changed. It's going to be, like Arkansas have their own relay system. Oregon now have Oregon Relays. You have Drake, you have Penn. There's all these different relay systems going on because people are trying to create their own monopoly over it. And it's just not a great thing where, I mean, I guess an example would be in a different sport. I know somebody kind of reached out saying it wasn't bad for the sport because, they're creating all this hype and in this environment in their own kind of home system. But like, if you look at F1, last weekend was in Italy. That's Ferrari's home course, home system. Red Bull didn't shy away and say, "Oh, we'll just stay in the Netherlands and do our Grand Prix. We'll go to Italy and beat the Ferrari team," and that's what they did. So I feel like there's not that the rivalry that's not as focused. It's more focused on just the athletes making sure that they're protected in the system by not just getting beaten by their own kind of branding. So, but that's the way I've kind of felt about it. And yeah, it kind of sucks we don't get to race them, because I think now it's another time trial coming up next week that people are just going to expect us to run around and do the exact same thing. So it's a bit disheartening, but at the end of the day. Hopefully, like, there's a message out there, and maybe next time, if we don't do Penn, we go to Oregon Relays and we try and chase the competition. So, yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
So you
Penn
said
Relays.
it was a month out. You got an email from them a month out inviting you. I mean, what was the response?
Yeah, Dathan did it. He's like, "What are you guys like? What are you doing? We announced that we're doing Penn 3 months ago, and now you're inviting us to a different relay system, like, and on is sponsoring Penn. So that's a reason why we're going. I mean, we're a small brand, and we're trying to impact on high school kids, on the American running community, because we're not as big as Nike, and it's an important meet for us. So it was a bit of a slap in the face, I think, to get that response and think, well, you guys are doing relay anyway. You could just come and do a relay, come do a workout, come and come to Penn. But, if you get better than us, come beat us at our own sponsored meet. That'd be great advertisement for Nike, for the Oregon boys. So that's the way we kind of took it. And at the end of the day, they've got their own priorities and own motives to do what they do. And I'm not definitely not upset with the athletes or anything like that, because I think they're fantastic lads, and they're doing a great thing for the sport, particularly for American high school running and for Oregon itself, and Hayward, just hyping it up for Eugene for Worlds. But at the end of the day, like, I think people are going to get bored of the same kind of system when there's no change of rivalry. When you want to compete against another team that's probably equally matched, there's a bit of a challenge there, and it creates a lot of learning curves and experiences when you compete against guys like that. You take so much away from it, whether you win or lose. So that's the way we took it. And at the end of the day, yeah, they make their decisions, we do ours, and hopefully in the future we could see some rivalry in relays, because I think the one thing that gets me annoyed looking at major championships like Worlds or Olympics, they have these mixed 4x400, 4x100 relays. Why not put a DMR in there? It's very exciting. There's a lot of great countries with great DMR stuff, and that, I feel like those rivalries and those meets like Penn and Drake and Oregon and Arkansas relays, is that those hopefully meets bring attention to the sport, that there is something missing in those major championships, those relays, those distance relays that those athletes miss out on. So, but yeah, we'll see what happens in the future.
I feel like everybody agrees on world championships. Everybody obviously agrees on the Olympics. I want everybody to just agree on one more time. Just like, what can we agree on one more date in the year? I don't have any pie in the sky fantasies that we're going to be able to create this season where you and Cole and Cooper are going to be racing 7 times. But could we at least just agree on like one more week on the calendar that's important? And maybe it is a 4x mile, because as you mentioned, the groups are pretty evenly balanced now. Like, we have a lot of good groups throughout, especially US based groups, that could bring a good team. And what would the incentive be? I don't know if it's money, or maybe it's just the specter of show up if you're legit. And if not, everybody's going to be asking questions. Cause I feel like that's kind of what happened here. The pushback was all online, right? And it was not a matter of, it was like people don't want to get mocked in the internet age. And obviously there's a fine line there. You don't want to go too far, but I feel like that is sort of driving some of this idea of like, hey, are you ducking this group or that group? I mean, do you see a future where we could at least just agree on one other weekend of the year where you guys would all race?
Oh yeah, 100%. The internet stuff is I think that's all. It can all be garbage sometimes. But at the end of the day, like, I know particularly like these athletes are getting ready for more important races. But yeah, I definitely think there's going to be one day, one meet that I don't know how we're going to build it up, but you have Brooks Beast, you have the Ben Thomas's group, you have Bauman, you have all these amazing athletes, men and women, that could do these amazing meets. And I think the great thing about that too, particularly for fan engagement, is that you have people that are OAC fans, you have people that are the Nike team fans, you have people that are Brooks fans, Adidas fans. Like, if you had one of those athletes that's one of your favorites, but then you have 4 of them turn up to a meet and they're all there, you don't usually get that kind of engagement. You don't usually get all those athletes at the same time in the same meet, because usually they're competing in different events. Joe Quick was doing a 10K. I'm not doing a 10K. I'm not doing a 10K. 1500. Like, there's all these different people doing different events, different meets, not necessarily ducking, but they're doing meets that's prioritizing to their schedule. But if there was able to be a day which all these athletes were turning up together, it'd be like turning up to a running expo. Everyone's there. You get to see Josh Kerr, you get to see Cooper Teare, you get to see Matt Centrowitz, you get to see George Beamish. Like, it'd be incredible. And I think the one thing that needs to be addressed with that is it's not the athletes or the coaches in some instances that are hindering this. Is probably the brands and the sponsors, because they don't want to see athletes go and support another brand sponsored meet. Like, they don't want to send support to that. But if there was a way in which we made something, whether it's a Diamond League or an IAAF kind of section meet where it's kind of not encompassing one brand, it's encompassing just just the racing in general, not a world championships, but like a club team something, relay championships. I don't know, but it's definitely lacking in the sport, because I think a meet like that, you'd get a lot of fan engagement. And I think that's what people want, is to be able to go to a meet where they have all these athletes that they know and love, all in the same place, all racing in the same race. It would be something that would be very special. And I think if we were able to pull that off and everyone was able to turn up at least once, I think they'd come back, because it'd be exciting whether you win or lose, to be a part of something like that.
Want to kind of segue into the race you're actually going to be running on Friday. What's the order you're going to run? Can you tell us? And also, I noticed Johannes Reyes is on your. Can you tell us a little bit about him? He's a kind of a name I haven't heard of much. I'm sure you know. Obviously, he's on your team. But what's the lineup you're planning on putting out there in the order?
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Rich likes to go back and forth with the order a little bit, because I think you put Joe Klecker anywhere, he's going to run probably a really good 355, 354 mile, maybe even quicker, depending on how good he feels. But I think for the order in particular, we'll probably put Jonas, for example, is here. He's training with us for 6 weeks in the year. Like, he's part of our team now, from Zurich, and he's a great guy, very Swiss. He's awesome. He's been great to have him here. He's been here for a few days, and he's just getting back from an injury. He has an ankle issue, but he ran yesterday, and he's doing well here in Boulder. So we're excited to have him part of the team, and bring in some European vibes, as well as Carmela. It's been fantastic to have him. With the order at the moment, we're looking at getting Tom Elmer in to run a leg, who is a guy from the Europe section of On. So he'll come in. Morgan has been running great. Chicken Boy's moving stride to stride, but he's definitely not in the position yet to run a quick mile yet. And I think we don't want to push him into that direction, because we've seen so much positive growth, particularly in his running. So we're going to probably have the order as I think Tom will probably go first, Geordie maybe second, and then Joe and I would go 3-4. Just because I think if there is some sort of gap that we need to gain from time, I think Joe and I definitely have the capability to kind of hurt ourselves to try and push the time back and get as close as we can to that record. But as the Oregon guys showed, that record is very impressive, and it's done by 4 Irishmen, and one of them is my agent. So I'd love to have bragging rights and take it away from him. But that would be the order, but it can honestly change. I know that I'll probably go last. I was toying the idea, because we didn't have a fourth man at some point. I was telling Dathan, I'll just put me in the first and fourth leg. That would be entertaining. See if I can survive 2 back-to-back miles after doing, because I felt I'm in very, very good shape right now. So the best shape I've been in this time of year after Worlds indoors and Australian champs. So it would have been funny to see people probably see me go for the first leg and then come around for the fourth leg, really hurting myself. But so that would be probably the order that we do. But we want to keep it exciting, obviously, as much as we can when it's kind of just us. Obviously, a lot of other teams have dropped out of it, but we'll try and make it exciting as possible.
If the clock says 12 minutes when you get the stick on anchor, do you believe that you could break the record?
Yeah. If I got enough self-hatred, yeah. If somebody whispered Oregon, or they had the O popped up or something like that, then I'd probably hurt myself. But I mean, I think I can. I mean, the one thing with those is you never know until you get to the day. Like, particularly with relays, I feel like there's so much that goes into it. There's so much, like everyone obviously has to be on. Like somebody could have an off day and it could really set you back. I know James West, for example, was an incredible athlete and he ran 4:01, I think. And he's obviously a better athlete than that. But sometimes in the day you just don't perform or don't deliver what you think you can. So, but yeah, if I saw that on the clock and I saw someone holding an Oregon T-shirt up, I probably would break it. Yeah.
All right,
You
so
just
we need to make sure we get an
simulcast the
Oregon
Reds.
T-shirt. We need to get Oregon T-shirts around the track, and you just constantly are chasing the T-shirts as running pure hate to get to this 15:49.
Sounds good.
Is this new, the hatred for Oregon, or is that back from Wisconsin days?
Oh, it's a bit of Wisconsin days, but it's not. It's a bit. It's a bit more of a rivalry thing. I like to stir the pot a little bit. I just feel like sometimes it's a bit too bland with some things, and like I mean with Josh as well. Like me and Josh stir each other up all the time. But he's a Scotsman and I'm an Aussie, so like we're used to that kind of back and forth, giving each other crap. And but obviously, when people do well, like particularly when Josh is out lights out killing it, I always give him good creds, and he's the same with me. So there's a great relationship when it comes to rivalry like that, and I'd like to start that with Oregon. Because I know in particular Cole and Cooper are going to be fantastic athletes for years to come, and I hope to be that too, as well as my teammates. And we'd love to stir them up as much as possible, give them a bit of, make their lives a little bit harder than what they are, and sometimes that pushes greatness. And if you can give them a stirring up, and then they run ridiculous times, then sometimes I feel like, oh, I'm responsible for that in some way, and then hopefully they feel the same when they stir me up or give me a bit of slack. I hope. I really enjoy getting caught out or people giving me a bit of slack. It's I feel like sometimes it's good for the ego and also good for the ambition. So yeah, and also I think with Oregon as well, they definitely have a reputation of being the track school. And I went to obviously Wisconsin, where you've got Chris Zielinski and Simon Byram, Morgan McDonald, and all these other athletes that have had a great legacy on Wisco. So we obviously feel like we have a great track legacy as well as cross. So yeah, it's a bit of both, I think.
Getting back to the point about candor between you and Josh. I mean, I've obviously noticed that back to your collegiate days. Like you guys speak freely, I'll say the least, and you guys are not afraid to go back and forth or say what you think. And then now you have this podcast where you guys also aren't shy with your opinions, you, Jordy, and Morgan. I'm curious, has anything that you've said on the pod gotten back to an athlete that you've spoken about and caused any sort of issue? Like, have you been getting texts on the side? Have you been confronted in any races about what you said on the pod? Because as podcasters, Gordon and I, sometimes you hear it in real life, but oftentimes people just kind of separate what they see on a computer screen or what they hear in their headphones. They don't expect to actually see you as a real person.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, we haven't really received anything. We've actually the great thing about podcasting, as you guys also might experience, is that we get educated quite a bit, because sometimes we make mistakes, and people, fans, and all that, they'd always message us and say, "Hey, this is what happened." Like I think there was a great system with when I was in Serbia for Worlds. Like next to our hotel, there was just a big this pile of rubble, and I didn't know what was going on. I thought it was just like construction had stopped, and there was this pile of rubble next to it. But when we said that on the pod, we got educated by a Serbian a fan who told us that there was a bombing in 1999, and this is what occurred, and that sort of stuff for us is great, because we want to be able to get better and fine tune the craft of podcasting, and being able to be as educated and as aware as possible of what we can portray and what we can talk about. And that's also been a great factor, but we've never really been approached by a guest or anything like that saying, of what we've said or what we've tried to say. I mean, I have this ongoing thing about mispronouncing people's names, which I always think is quite funny, but I do it to my teammates as well. But I haven't been approached about that yet. With Josh in particular, I think Josh and I mean, I was telling Josh he was getting soft because, he's engaged and he's got the Olympic bronze medal. What else do you want? You're kind of getting soft now. You ticked all the boxes. And we stir each other up, because he'd probably stir me up about wearing on cleats or something like that. And yeah, I think with that, it's just great back and forth, and we've never really. I don't think him and I don't know, maybe Ribic would pay attention to our podcast a little bit, but I don't think they would pay attention to it much. I think they're pretty focused on their own agenda, and if something does come up, they look at it and probably give it a laugh and give us a counter, and it kind of goes back and forth. But I definitely enjoy that. And again, like I think the one thing that's great about that kind of relationship with rivalry is that at Milrose, Josh spoke great in his post-race interview, and I as well. And when Josh was kicking me in the bum, did the same thing. Like we definitely give respect to when it's due, and that's the great thing about our sport is I feel like everyone's just way too nice, and at the point of giving credit to when people do well, and sometimes you don't do as well. And in such an individual sport, it's a very lovely thing to see people giving that credit and respect to another athlete when our sport is so selfish and egocentric at sometimes. And that's why I enjoy the rivalry and picking it up. So hopefully with Oregon, Cooper and Cole, they might do a new generation video. They might come out in a couple of weeks' time, giving us some sort of slack. I'll be enjoying to watch if they do. Or they, make fun of us for not breaking the world best that's coming up. They could do that, honestly. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'd like to push that a bit more because I think it makes people excited, and also it could make people love Cooper and Cole more. When I say stuff like that, or it makes some people love OAC more. So creating a little bit of a fan rivalry was also a bit of fun.
Are you concerned at all that if you guys break the world best, that it would only live for like 12 hours because the college 4x mile the next day could break it? I mean,
yeah.
Wisconsin just had a bunch of guys run 337s and 336s. Ole Miss, they got Mario Garcia-Romo and a bunch of 338 guys. Texas, sub 4-milers, Georgetown, Villanova.
No, I think it'd be a slow defeat looking at them breaking it, because I think they are very, very capable, if not more capable than us. I mean, Ole Miss, I think, is probably the most threatening. They have a fantastic group of lads that could run really fast when they're on. Wisconsin looks fantastic. Obviously, I'm going to give them a lot of credit. Owen Hacker in his 20th year of college is doing incredible things. But he's in unbelievable shape. 13-19, looked like he had more in the bank, so he could probably run a really fast mile. Adam Spencer, another Aussie. Jackson Sharp, another Aussie, running amazing. Yeah, I mean, honestly, a college team could take it down. And the way I think you guys have covered it so well, like the way in which college competition and racing has gone from just one extreme to another, it makes me very, very glad that I left college because they're just running incredible times and doing incredible things. And it kind of scares me that I would probably be absolutely swept under the rug when I was in college. But I think that's a very big possibility, a very big chance. I think it's going to be cool to see if that happens, because there's been so much spotlight on Oregon breaking it or us breaking it. And then if some other, if Ole Miss just comes and just destroys it, it'd be very, very cool and a great recruiting tool for that college to come out and do a world's best. So it's definitely very possible. And I think if we do fortunately break it and get a world's best, we'll probably celebrate it as much as possible, because we know it's not going to last long.
One other. So you haven't run yet this outdoor season, correct? You haven't. Have you?
No, I have not.
It's pouring rain now in Texas, so sorry if you hear thunder and lightning in the background.
Yeah, it's thunder.
You're opening up your season with this mile. What's kind of your game plan, preparing yourself for Worlds? Because it's kind of crazy. We look at the clock and it's already almost here. Like July is going to be here before we know it. What's your racing plan that you have kind of going into the month of May and June?
Yeah, so for me, obviously, Penn's an important thing for our brand, and we're going to try and portray and be on our best behavior going into that and doing something crazy. Our Coffee Club will be there doing a podcast as well. But yeah, we're going to go with that. We'll do a 5K. I think we're going to do a 5K paced after the 4x mile. So similar to what the Oregon guys did, just a bit of a training workout session. I'll head to this town running the next week and do some pacing, and then also I think my first official race, 1500 meter race, will be Birmingham, with my best friend Josh Kerr, and some other great athletes coming in like George as well. So That would be the plan moving forward. And I think for me and for every athlete going through now, particularly ones that have probably already kind of cemented themselves in their teams to go and compete in Eugene, is to win races. Um, the one thing I kind of watched from a distance from Jakob last year was when his first interview, when I got second to him in Gateshead, he said, like, times are irrelevant. I just want to win races. I want to beat the best guys, win races, know how they race. And I think that's one thing that I'm going to try and take into leading into this championship year, is just to try and win races, try and beat some of the best guys in the world. Because if you can do that and you can kind of watch their strategies and challenge them, it gives you a better insight into leading into championship racing. So that's going to be my strategy going forward, competing in those uh, world world championships, and obviously Com Games 10 days later, which will be interesting to see that double up with a lot of athletes. But yeah, that's kind of my plan going forward. I'll be fortunate enough to run Birmingham, and then I'll run pre Boundary Mile. So hopefully I see some Cooper and Cole action, be able to rub elbows with the Oregon greats, and then I'll go to Oslo and do the Dream Mile with Jakob, which will be a great experience as well, and then get ready for Eugene. So the nice thing about Eugene as well for a lot of athletes that are based in the US is that it's not much of a travel for us, 2 hour flight. So it's going to be better than Tokyo. We're going to be nice and close and getting into training in Boulder and getting excited about it. But yeah, I think the one thing I'm taking away from this season in particular is to try and win races and try and beat some big heavy hitters, as Morgan would say.
Is there any like strategy that you're gonna like data that you're gonna gather in these upcoming Diamond League races, like the 15 at Birmingham, the mile at Pre, racing up against a Jakob, like the people you're gonna see in that final in Eugene? Is there anything that you kind of focus on in those races outside of just trying to win them for like data purposes? And be
Yeah,
like, all right, like setting, you're gonna be going up against these 4 guys and these 3 guys, in 2 months' time.
yeah, definitely. I think the way is always going to be the finish. I think of a lot of races, who's finishing the best. Maybe they're not winning races, but they're closing in a 52 off a really fast pace or stuff like that. Like, I think that's stuff they'll be aware of. Um, as well as like the different ways people can race. Because I've noticed now in particular, it's getting interesting, the 1500, because last year it was all about running really, really quick from the gun and just holding people out. Whereas I think this year there's going to be a lot more of like a Josh Kerr kind of style race where you push from the hardest point and you keep going. From 800 out, from 600 out, I can see a lot of those races going down like that, because a lot of those athletes, 329, 330 guys, they don't need to run a fast time. They just want to win the race and break people. So be interested to see how all those races play out. It'll be interesting to see how Chariot runs, because a lot of the way he races is he goes hard from the start. Maybe goes through a 151, 152 first 800, then he'll slow down to a 60, and then he'll close in a 53. So races like that will be interesting to see if he actually does things like that are ridiculous, or he kind of races a bit more conservatively because of what happened to him at the Olympics, with Jakob kind of playing his card and letting him take the lead, and Jakob sitting up on him. But it'll be interesting to see what people are going to use tactic wise. But I'm probably going to be paying attention data wise to the way they finish, how far they finish out, how far they kick from, whether they win or lose that race. It'll be interesting to see where they are, because in a lot of championship races, if a race goes slow from the start and then picks up, a lot of those athletes will be able to just close down and get the spot. And that's the one thing you want to do, is get through as easy as possible through the rounds. And a lot of those athletes will be able to judge in a lot of those Diamond Leagues from where they are, not just fitness wise, but tactic wise in closing and finishing races.
You said before you think we're going to see more aggressive racing this year. Obviously, you race like that. Josh races like that. I'm thinking back last year, I think it was at Mount Sac. It was you and Justin Knight that broke away from
Mm.
everybody else. Josh hasn't been shy about basically calling out the American runners. Gordon hasn't been shy about calling out the American runners, although his PR is much slower than Josh Kerr, so the credibility is lacking there. But it's all out there. It's all out there at this point. Everybody knows like how you guys feel. Do you think that is
Mm.
enough to encourage a collective mindset shift, or do you think the people who are going to be think they're the kickers are still going to kick, and the people like you and Josh are going to be tasked with getting this thing going, lap 2, lap 3, and carrying it through to the exciting finish?
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean Josh and I joked about it at Milrose. It's like, oh, Scotsman and an Aussie in one of the biggest American indoor meets in the world. Colby actually, to his credit, went with it, um, and he's a
Hmm.
fantastic runner to watch. He's exciting, but there is that kind of shift because I think if you give the reins to me and Josh or individuals like us who race like that, you're kind of setting in for defeat because you go, oh no, here they go, they're going to go for it. And
Hmm.
if you have that mindset in the race, it's over. I don't think a lot of Americans are going to be happy with what that entails. But yeah, I think Josh has a point. Like I think a lot of Americans don't go for it, and I agree with that. I think there's so much American talent and there's so many Americans running right now who could definitely go for it and challenge the lead and challenge a lot of people that run like that. I think Cooper and Cole are those type of people, actually, those type of athletes. I mean, Cooper's 353 anchor by himself shows to me that he can push it at a hard point and he could go for it and say, I'm taking the reins, I'm going to take this race. He definitely shows that. Will he do it? Well, that's just up to Cooper and obviously the race and what the Americans want to do. But yeah, I hope collectively it does change a mind shift. I mean, looking at a lot of the best runners in the world in the 1500, a lot of them are 15.5 guys
Hmm.
now, because a lot of the guys that you see running 1500s are running probably low 13s in the 5K. So their strength is unbelievable. So they want to play with that with their advantage. And I think the one thing that, particularly in male middle distance running, is everyone thinks they have the best kick. Everyone thinks they can
Yeah.
close in a 51:50 if it's a really slow race. And if you watch the British trials for the Olympics, Whiteman and Kerr did exactly that. They closed like absolute steam trains. So like if Kerr can close like that and can run maybe a 148 or whatever, like 800 out in a 1500 meter race, then really like he has a lot more tools than a lot of those guys who just think they can run off a slow race. So I think you'll see a difference in that. I think um, Cole in particular, from what he showed at the Olympics, he's matured a lot, I think, from those racing anyway. So he ran a 335 off a 148, 147 close, I think, at the trials. So he's a guy that can do that too.
Yeah.
And I think Americans will definitely start to transition to that as well. But I think I think the NCAA system has a bit to blame with that because I mean a lot of the races I
Hmm.
did, I mean I won a race off literally a kick at the end, um, which was a big race for my career in NCAA's. But that's like what most college athletes did. Whereas now I think you can see the shift. A lot of college guys like Kipsang are just like, oh, I'm just going to go run 333 now.
Hmm.
They're going for it. So I think that could be a transition and a shift going into it because a lot of more 1500 meter middle distance runners have a lot more tools in their arsenal to deal with different types of races, depending on who's in it or who's going to like take control of it. So it will be exciting. I think a lot of Americans are going to take to Josh Kerr's call and say, all right, you've said that. Let's see what we can do here.
You
Yeah,
think
and
you're
I
going to be
see.
able? Sorry.
Sorry, one more here, Gordon. Um, I see a bit of an alignment too. Like, don't mean to psychoanalyze here, but you guys race like you have nothing to lose. You race like you're not worried if you get eighth because you could also get first. And the way you speak about the sport, the way you talk about the sport, you carry that same sort of energy to it where it's like, hey, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to make a prediction. I'm going to call things like I see it. It might come back around and get me, but I'm also not going to bite my tongue about it. Like it seems like your running and your personality are sort of enmeshed into one. Do you see it that way or am I reading too much into that?
No, no, definitely. I think the one thing that I'm very, very I think I had a realization, particularly going through COVID and signing with a professional team, being able to run professionally as an athlete was probably a big lifetime goal of mine. It's just the careers that we have as professional runners are so short, and I would hate to have any regret and hate to be silent and hate to like just kind of toe the line and follow every other angle. And I know a lot of athletes, not just me, feel like that we have an enormous amount of privilege to be able to do what we do. And the one thing that I would love to do is give back to the sport in a way in which I hope is in medals, but also could be in a way in which people view the sport. I think a lot of athletes, not just me, have a lot to say and have a lot to give, and personality wise should come through because there's a lot of people that I'm big fans of in the sport that show that. And a lot of it is actually just for me. Yeah, I just want to enjoy it and have fun because I'm going to be old and wrinkly at some point and no one's going to care about me and all about my running achievements. And I'd love to be able to like kind of enjoy it and go through it as much as possible, enjoy being a part of it. And yeah, I just like to say what I see. And yeah, the nice thing about it is I get corrected, I get educated. And that's the one thing that I love about it too, is when I'm wrong, I learn something about it, which is right. And that's kind of my mindset. And I think you're right. My personality, my racing kind of mesh together. Dathan likes to call me an emotional runner because I run on emotion. But it's more of just like enjoying being passionate about it and knowing that like every race you do, it could be your last. You never know when an injury could pop up or when your career could kind of take a different shift. But yeah, I just want to enjoy it while it's here, and that's kind of my mindset from now on.
Final two questions for you, Ollie. Thanks again for coming on the pod. Best of luck at Penn Relays. Question number one, will you go undefeated against Americans in 2022?
Well, yes. I want
so far
to.
you are.
Yes, I
you haven't
want
lost
to.
an American yet
So far,
this
I am.
year.
Yeah, so far I am. I would love to. That's going to be a challenge, but I would love to. I think the one thing as well, particularly with Hayward being the place it was for my career, the realization of my career as a runner. I said this in Australian media. I was like, well, I'd love to go and beat Americans in their home soil, even though I live in America and I'm considered American by some Aussies. I'd love to do that. So yeah, I'd love to keep that streak. And no American beating me. It'd be lovely.
And then last one, more of an immediate prediction. What are you guys going to run on Friday? What's the time? What are you going to run? Predict.
So it's the time is going to be, so it's what's a 15:49 is the record?
Correct.
15:45 sounds pretty nice.
All right.
You know, it's got a 4, got 2 5s in it and a 1. I like those numbers. I'd like to run that. Yeah, I think we could see a time around that.
Sounds good. We'll hold you to it. 15:45 with how fast of a close? What's the anchor leg running? What's the
depends on how much it depends on how much my teammates hate me that day. Maybe I stir them up too much and they think, you know what, Ollie, you can take the reins here. But yeah, I'd love to run. If, you know, seeing obviously Cooper do something incredible like 53, I'd like to put myself in that same avenue of running maybe quicker than that. But again, it depends on weather, depends on where we are. But either way, I'm going to give it a crack and hopefully make it exciting.
We'll just say this. If you run sub 353 on your anchor, that counts as continuing your streak of beating Americans. You just have to run faster than 353.
Okay.
352 or better.
Okay. Yeah. No, I walked into that one, didn't I? Yeah. No, perfect. Sounds good.
provided it needs to happen. If you're obviously not into it,
yeah,
you're not going to, you know, but if you're in it, go for 352.
If I run 354, then that's a loss. Yeah.
That's
a loss. Yeah.
Ollie, thanks so much. Best of luck at Penn. We'll see you there. It's going to be fun. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you guys having me. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Ollie.